Just thanks for stopping. Do you mind giving us your view about this wait and this waiting approach that the Prime Minister seems to be taking? Do you think waiting for Donald Trump is the right strategy here in CUSMA negotiations?
Well, I think the Prime Minister needs to explain to Canadians what the approach is. We're hearing from government sources, from high-ranking Canadian sources, that the government is taking an explicit go-slow approach. That information should be coming from the Prime Minister himself. He needs to explain why, what the approach is, and secondly, he needs to explain why this is a good approach, because this is a very different approach than what the Mexican government is doing. First off, the Mexican government has been very transparent about their approach. They've been issuing formal statements about what is going on. They've also been having formal meetings. Just earlier this week, they announced that talks that Mexican and U.S. officials would be directed to hold talks on a variety of issues this week, including the tariffs on aluminum, steel, and autos, with President Sheinbaum indicating that she hoped that she was eyeing for a resolution of these tariffs before the completion of a CUSMA review. The statement also clearly indicated that Mexico and the United States would begin its formal bilateral negotiating round the week of May 25th. Here in Canada, we're not getting any information from the government, and we're certainly not getting formal updates from the government.
But the Prime Minister seems to be suggesting it's better to wait to get a better deal than to, get a terrible deal. What do you think of that suggestion that he and certainly other Liberal ministers and MPs are saying that?
Well, I think that's precisely the problem. The Prime Minister seems to be suggesting various things without being explicit about what the government's approach is. And secondly, explaining to Canadians why that is a good approach. And so what we would like to see today from Ambassador Wiseman at committee and also from the government generally is for them to explain to Canadians what exactly is going on. We're finding out things in dribs and drabs. We often find out after the fact, almost accidentally, that the Prime Minister has had a conversation with the U.S. President. We find out afterwards that phone calls have taken place. There's been very little information coming out of the official information coming out of the Canadian government about what exactly is going on, what the approach is, and why that is the best approach. Look, there are 2.6 million jobs at stake here that are at risk because not only of the tariffs, but of the review of CUSMA. We need certainty about what exactly is going on, and we're not getting that from the government.
Should we be prepared to make more concessions, you think?
Well, I'm not going to speculate on that, but what we need to understand is what exactly the Canadian government needs to make explicit what their approach is, and needs to explain why that is a good approach, because right now it seems that it's a very different approach than our other North American colleague and partner, trading partner, Mexico is taking.
Do you think it's time for premiers to put
and
American booze back on the shelves?
Again, I think the Canadian government needs to explain what exactly its approach is. A year ago, they rescinded a lot of the retaliatory counter tariffs as a concession. They then, in June of last year, rescinded the digital services tax. Two big concessions that Minister Champagne indicated at the time were to kickstart negotiations. Negotiations have stalled, and now we're hearing from anonymous sources that the government's decided to take a go-slow approach. Again, we need the Prime Minister himself to explicitly explain to Canadians what the approach is and why that is a good approach. And that hasn't happened to date, and that's what we're seeking from the government. Thank you very much.
Should Canada be prepared to make more concessions to get Trump to the table, to get the U.S. to the table?
No, I don't believe that will benefit. We've seen that Donald Trump doesn't respond to that sort of appeasement, and we've seen You know, we've seen the Canadian government appease Trump before to the detriment of Canadians. I don't think that's the right path.
What
And what
do
do
you
you
think
think about-
for when it comes to the final agreement between Alberta and Canada on carbon pricing? Do you have any concerns? Is there anything you're specifically hoping for and looking for?
I have many concerns about the carbon pricing and the agreement that they are developing. You know, the carbon market only works if it is effectively priced, and I'm not certain that that's in the best interest of what Danielle Smith is asking for, and it certainly isn't going to promote a carbon market that gets us to building a futures economy with jobs for Albertans.
But she does seem to
Stephen
have
Guilbeault
it.
out today with an op-ed saying that the government shouldn't back down from what's in the MOU. He's concerned that they might water it down below the 130 by 2030. Are you concerned about that?
Absolutely.
Do you think Mark Carney can get Daniel
Thank
Smith
you
on
guys.
side?
Gotta get in there.
Do you expect any more affordability measures for Canadians in your economic update on Tuesday?
We've been there for Canadian all along. You know, we know affordability is top of mind for Canadians, and we're not waiting. You see the suspension of the federal excise tax on gas is showing up at the pump, which is a good thing. But you know, affordability is top of mind, and certainly top of mind. That's what I think every morning when I wake up. How can we make life more affordable for Canadians? And you know, we've started, and we're always going to continue to look at measures to support
But
Canadians.
will there be new measures?
I think you'll have to wait on Tuesday. If I tell you everything, you won't show up on Tuesday.
Is waiting for Donald Trump to negotiate the best approach?
Thank you.
Mr. Davies, do you believe Mark Carney can get Alberta Premier Daniel Smith on side when it comes to actually getting Alberta to strengthen its industrial carbon price?
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, you know, I think it's vitally important that Canada get back on track and meet our international obligations. We're not doing that. In fact, our record is frankly deplorable, and Alberta is a key partner in that, so I hope so.
But what are you looking for in this MOU when it comes to the agreement? Do you want Alberta to hit $130 a ton by 2030, kind of what the schedule says, albeit at a higher level?
Well, you know, I want Canada to meet our commitments as a country. Alberta is a key partner in that. You know, it's a major economic driver, and it's also a major carbon emitter. So I don't think we're going to be able to meet our commitments without Alberta playing its role and meeting its fair share. So whatever gets us there as fast as possible is what I support.
Do you think that there's a risk that the Prime Minister could weaken the federal system in order to get Alberta on board and move ahead with its pipeline and competitiveness? That's the argument industry's making. Do you have any concerns about potentially weakening the system?
Well, sure I do, because that's Mr. Carney's track record. I mean, he's been in office for a year, and all he's done is weaken environmental protections and rolled back standards. So his record so far is one of weakening Canada's carbon emissions, not strengthening them. So yeah, I'm concerned.
Was it even a good idea to get into a deal like this with Alberta from the federal government's part?
Well, the federal government needs to work with every province, and Alberta is, as I said, it's a major economic driver, and it's also a major emitter. And so I don't think we work as a country if we don't have Alberta on side. But I don't think the way to meet our targets is to weaken them and to give in to a premier like Danielle Smith, who is seemingly unconcerned about the climate crisis and is not willing to actually do her share.
Mr. Davies, there are 26 MPs right now who don't have public ethics conflict of interest disclosures on the public registry, including Conservatives, Liberals, Bloc Québécois members. I mean, does that give you any sort of pause as to Canadians' trust in our institutions and our politicians?
Well, I'm glad to see there's no New Democrats on that list. No, look, I take ethics seriously, and I take transparency seriously. In fact, at one time, Liberals did too. I remember Justin Trudeau saying his government would be open by default and transparent. And a key feature of that is MPs disclosing to the public their holdings. And when they're in breach of that, I think it sends a terrible message to Canadians. And frankly, they're also not in compliance with the law.
One of those who doesn't have a public disclosure is Minister Mandi-Gulmasti. I mean, she served in this government for a year in that role, and as far as I can tell, I've asked the Public Commissioner's Office, no penalties have been laid, and at the maximum penalty $500. Do you think that there should be different enforcement measures here?
I do. Clearly, the enforcement measures are too low. Frankly, there's been actually a bit of a track record, especially on the Liberal side, of failing to meet disclosure requirements and also breaching conflicts of interest, going back to Finance Minister Morneau, if I remember correctly. So clearly, I don't think the penalties are enough. I think that we need to send a clear message to all MPs and senators that complying with disclosure and ethics requirements are they're not discretionary, they're an obligation. And the only way to send that message is by SWIFT and significant penalties if they don't.
One Liberal MP who doesn't have a public disclosure said today that she's having problems with the website. Did you have any problems with the website when you went to do yours?
Well, I've been here, I'm in my 18th year, and I've never had that problem.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Carr, there are 26 MPs right now with no public conflict of interest disclosures. Is that a concern for you?
I haven't seen. I thought I saw one, but
Michael Barrett is the only cabinet minister without. Is that a concern that someone can serve in cabinet for a year without it?
I don't know what the details are of any of those, so I'm not going to comment on it without further information. I presume there's been correspondence between them and the appropriate offices, so nothing more to add there.
7 months late. Do you think all MPs should do it on time?
I suspect that there are policies in place. I know I did mine relatively quickly. That's my OCD perhaps kicking in, but I can't speak to others.
Former Minister Guilbeault is out with an op-ed today in which he encourages the government not to back down from any of the provisions in the MOU with Alberta, not to water down the carbon price or anything like that. Are you concerned that the government is going to give more to Alberta in that MOU?
Well, there are no details available, so we're talking in hypotheticals. You know how much politicians love to talk in hypotheticals. What I do know is that we have a necessity to drive forward the development and growth and export of our resources and our industries. So the Prime Minister and Minister Hodgson and others, as you're well aware, have been active in negotiating with the Government of Alberta. There are all sorts of conditions and criteria that are in place vis-a-vis that MOU. I'm not at the table for those particular conversations, so whether or not there are certain things in relation to what you mentioned a moment ago being considered or not, I can't comment on.
The MOU says $130 per ton by 2030, but Daniel Smith is saying that might not be. I mean, do you think the government should negotiate on something that the government already agreed to, or the Alberta government already agreed to?
Well, again, I mean, negotiations are complicated, and winds always change by virtue of global circumstances, domestic circumstances. But again, I'm not at the table, so it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to comment on a hypothetical.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Mr. Fergus, can I ask you, there are 26 MPs right now with no public conflict of interest disclosures on the public registry. Is that a concern for you?
Well, I mean, I think it would be a concern for me. I think they would have to speak to the ethics commissioner. Sometimes you get an extension for whatever reason, waiting for new information. I don't know the details of it, but I do know that you just work with the ethics commissioner's office and you get the forms in as soon as you can.
Certainly. I mean, extensions, it's been a year since the election, and I mean, do you think it's supposed to be updated every year, so do you think there are issues when extensions can be granted for too long?
That's really going to have to be up to the ethics commissioner to determine what it is. Sometimes it's just a small information that somebody needs and updated on a RSP investment, or perhaps information confirming my system. It's all public, it's all very easy and everybody can see it. But I remember I had to get, I was 1%, I co-signed for my daughter's mortgage 1%. I had to always get that updated information, where it was and how much was owed on it. So it's just one of those things where you just got to go, track all of that information and bring it forward. It's not always easy.
Do you think the system's working overall, even though there are 26 without?
Well, I would like to see 26 people file their stuff, and I guess perhaps with greater scrutiny, you'll see that people will be doing it very shortly, I would hope.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck.
Do you think Mark Carney can get Alberta Premier Daniel Smith on side when it comes to strengthening her carbon price?
Well, I think he's made some pretty big progress in terms of having them agree to a $130 per
that
ton.
Timeline's still up to negotiation. What timeline would you like to see for it?
Well, look, these are big and important files and very complex. Try to bring people on to making sure that we are providing a clean environment for everybody in the future. So it's just going to take some time.
Are you worried that the feds that under Carney the government could weaken the system?
No,
for the sake of competitiveness?
I have really full confidence that we're going to strengthen the system and use what really works. It'll be a market-based system, and we have to bring everybody along board.
What year do you want Alberta to hit 130 per ton?
Well, I guess the real answer is a bit more of a philosophical answer. It should have been 20 years ago. When's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the next time? Today. So I'd like it to be done as soon as possible.
Thanks, Greg.
You're welcome.
There are 26 MPs right now with no conflict of interest disclosures on the public registry. Is that a concern for you?
Certainly if there's, but I didn't know that. So thanks for...
But one of them is Mandy Gilmasti, who's been serving in cabinet for a year. Should there be greater scrutiny or any penalties in place for a cabinet member who does this?
Well, I know we have one of the most rigorous systems in the world in terms of ethics disclosures and, Conflict of Interest Act and the Code for Members. So I've had the chance to review those in committee in the past, and I think they're pretty rigorous. So I think the systems are in place, the checks and balances are in place to make sure everyone is following those rules.
To the ethics office, they actually said that they can impose a $500 penalty, but they usually don't for late filings if the individual's still in touch with them. Do you think that should be enforced?
Well, I think that all members should be following those rules, that's for sure. Whether the commissioner's office, it's to their discretion, I would think, as to how they enforce those rules. But yeah, there's guidelines in place, and I think that they should do their job, which I'm sure they are doing. I'm sure they take their role very seriously.
I think it's a concern for public trust in our institutions that we don't have these public filings in a registry.
Well, if it was a pattern of behavior that we saw regularly, then yeah, I think it would be a problem. But I'm not sure that it's become that at this point. But again, I just found out about this through your questions.
When it comes to the carbon pricing agreement Canada's negotiating with Alberta, do you believe that Canada should get Alberta to stick to $130 per ton by 2030? I know that's less than 170, but do you think 2030 should be the date that Alberta reaches that level?
Well, I can't really speak. I will say, from my perspective, the industrial carbon price is one of the most effective climate policies we have for driving down emissions. There's been many reports on that. So I think those negotiations are really, really important. They're underway. I'm not privy to all the dialogue between the Prime Minister and the Premier. So I can't really say where things are going to land exactly, but it is a really important thing to have both an industrial carbon price that is sort of consistent and rigorous in terms of stringency criteria. Those things are really, really important to driving down emissions over time and reaching our climate goals. So.
Do you think that the op-ed by Stephen Guilbeault today is a sign of any friction within the Liberal caucus regarding this? He's basically calling out his own government as it's negotiating with Alberta.
I think we have a big tent government, as you've seen, with floor crossings from all sides, with people running from the provincial NDP party for the Liberal Party. I think that there's a lot of tolerance for differences of opinion inside. I think Mark Carney's a great leader in that regard, that he's able to unify people. I think there's a focus on results, and I think Canadians are in a different place today than they were a few years ago in terms of wanting us to be really pragmatic, really focused on the economy, really focused on cost of living. So I don't see major rifts in our caucus at all, and I think Minister Guilbeault, who obviously former Minister Guilbeault, has always been someone who's really seen himself as an advocate for environment and addressing climate change, and I think we really value his opinion. I know I do. I think he's very insightful, and so I don't think it's necessarily a sign of a major rift in the party.
Are you concerned at all that getting Alberta on side could result in, or the feds might weaken the federal industrial carbon pricing system? Because Alberta is saying we need a price industry can afford. Oil and gas sector is saying we have to think about competitiveness as number one.
Yeah, it's a real tough balancing act right now, I think, because Canada needs to strengthen our economy. We need to be more independent. We need to diversify trade with other countries. And all of that, boils down to ensuring competitiveness, ensuring that our industries can remain competitive. So I think, yeah, it's a tough balancing act. But I think, again, the industrial carbon price is such a central component to a serious climate plan that we've got to protect it. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah.
You might have seen that Minister Gilmasti does not have her ethics screening process complete on the public registry. What do you make of that?
Canadians expect that there's going to be transparency with all cabinet ministers and the Prime Minister, and it's been basically a year since the last election, and this needs to be something that's prioritized. You'd seen today that the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics, we published our report on our review of the Act, and we've made a number of recommendations to really help restore Canadians' confidence, and this is another example of what's the seriousness with which the ministers are taking this process, and how quickly is it being fulfilled? If there's a capability gap or a resource deficiency that the commissioner's office have, well, that needs to be identified when he comes before committee next, because a year is too long. It doesn't provide transparency with any of the decision making that Cabinet's been taking over the last year.
And she's the only cabinet minister who currently doesn't have an ethics disclosure, but there are members of the Conservative Party on there as well. I believe there's 9 Conservative MPs who haven't finished their disclosures. I mean, what do you make of that?
So disclosures under the code and the Act, obviously there's different requirements for the two, and this is the question: where are the delays along the process? And it's important that any time members of Parliament are involved in votes in the House, debates in the House, and particularly for cabinet ministers with respect to the Act, when they're taking decisions in cabinet, that Canadians understand that those are being made strictly in the best interest of Canadians, and that there can't even be the perception that it's being done to benefit their own personal interest or private interest, or that of someone they're related to or acquainted with.
To be clear, I mean, the code actually gives them more time. It gives them 120 days if you're a minister. It's 60 if you're an MP. So they're even more late. I think it's 9 months for them late. So, I mean, are you going to talk with your colleagues about why they don't have their ethics disclosures?
Well, I mean, I don't know of the ones that you speak of in particular, but the question is, has the commissioner said that they're deficient in having met any of the timelines? And if the commissioner has said, as he did in the minister's case, that, it takes a long time to do these things, it's again a question of the urgency and what does this system look like? Do the rules allow for too much time in the final reporting of it? And I would say, when it's been a year since the election, that all members of Parliament should have that disclosure filed with the Commissioner, and all of the public-facing information available for their constituents and for all Canadians.
And the Ethics Commissioner's office said that they could impose a $500 penalty, but they usually don't in these circumstances, as long as the MP is sort of responding to them. Do you think that should change? Maybe they should have greater enforcement tools?
Well, we've said for quite some time that when it comes to violations of the Act, that there certainly should be more serious penalties, so that there's both a means to discourage and to dissuade people from taking decisions that are in contravention of the Act. We've seen with the Liberal government 10 times members of their party found to have broken ethics laws in this country. The Prime Minister famously, and members of Mr. Carney's front bench included in that, and penalties have never amounted to more than a couple $100. We've said that fines should be many orders of magnitude higher than that, because Canadians driving too fast down the street get hit with fines bigger than parliamentarians who are found to have broken Canada's ethics laws.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, have a great day.
Minister Fraser, there are 26 MPs right now with no public conflict of interest disclosures. Is that a concern for you?
Look, I'm only learning of this in real time right now. I try to make a habit of not commenting on things that I haven't learned about yet. So happy to figure out the facts behind the story.
Should all MPs have a conflict of interest disclosures public? Doesn't that help bring trust in our institutions?
I think it's important, if there are rules established with respect to complying with conflict of interest rules, that all MPs who are subject to the rules comply with them. Absolutely.
Your colleague Michael Barrett is one of those who doesn't have. I mean, she's been serving in cabinet for about a year. Is that not a concern?
Look, again, I'm only learning of this in real time. I'll have to learn more about the facts before I offer further comment.
On the Cowichan situation in BC, the Conservatives say they've set up their own task force to try and find policy solutions around property rights. They're claiming that property rights are a threat because of that ruling. Others have disputed whether that's the case or not. What's the next steps for the government, and how do you respond to the Conservative task force?
Well, look, there's a live case before the courts. The federal government disagrees with the decision of the Superior Court and has, in fact, appealed it. But more than just appealing the decision, we've been trying to advocate to better protect private property rights throughout the process. As far back as 2017, we've been seeking to have the court notify private property owners. We're supporting the application of Montrose, a private property owner in the area, to have them be able to advance arguments that were not made at trial. It's essential that as we seek to advance the cause of reconciliation, that at the same time we respect the rights of private property owners. It's a subject of much discussion on Parliament Hill, but I'll have to leave it there because I'm late for an obligation here. Thanks, folks. Appreciate your time.
New Mr. Long, there are 26 MPs right now who don't have public conflict of interest statements available in the public registry. What do you make of that?
I wasn't aware of that, but they don't have what again?
Conflict of interest submissions. You know those initial profiles every MP has to submit? They're not on the public record.
Oh, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm surprised to hear that, but hopefully they will sooner than later.
Minister Masty's one of them. It's been 7 months. Do you make anything of that delay?
No, not at all.
Karim, can I ask you a question? Do you have a second?
We can get you through the visitor center.
So that we've seen in the ethics office, I think you might be one of the individuals who doesn't have a public ethics disclosure yet.
Yeah.
Can I ask you why that is?
Yeah, I'm working with the office right now. I'm in conversation with them to finalize that.
I think it's been 7 or 8 months. Is there a reason for the delay?
Nope.